2.1. Act 1, A Tale of Two Cindys. Bob is a very successful physician in Beverly Hills, California. He is often invited to deliver speeches or appear on distinguished panels at medical conferences around the country. On one of his trips to New York City, he met Cindy, whose job it was to coordinate and produce medical conferences for large pharmaceutical companies, universities, and other clients. Bob and Cindy were attracted to each other immediately and soon began an intense romance. It had both the excitement and difficulties that typify long-distance relationships, given his home and medical practice on the West Coast and her home and base of operations on the East Coast. As the relationship grew, Bob would find himself flying to New York almost weekly for passionate but all too brief weekends. When he first came to see me, I asked Bob what had initially attracted him to Cindy. He told me, without hesitation, that he loved her confidence. She was beautiful, well-poised, self-assured, a great conversationalist, and a terrific lover. But above all, he prized her seeming independence. She had built a successful career, and from his perspective as a participant at many of the medical conferences she orchestrated, Cindy seemed supremely competent at her job, too. After 3 months of living apart, Bob and Cindy decided that the long-distance part of the relationship was becoming too difficult for them both, and they discussed living together and eventually getting married. There was little debate about logistics. They agreed that it would be both unwise and impractical for Bob to give up his thriving medical practice and start over from scratch in New York. Therefore, Cindy happily volunteered to move west. Within a month of their decision, Cindy packed up and moved in with Bob in his plush West Los Angeles home. At first it was bliss for them both. Cindy doted on Bob, always making herself available to him. She loved cooking for him and fussing over him, and Bob loved the attention, which he tried to reciprocate in kind. Then one day, a couple of weeks into the new setup, Bob announced that he had made plans to play tennis with some of his friends the coming Saturday. Cindy was not happy about that at all. Her reaction took Bob by surprise. She pouted and complained that she was being abandoned after she had given up everything to move to California. She did not know anyone in California, and what was she supposed to do while he was out all day, and so on along that refrain. Just like that, Cindy seemed entirely different to Bob. The independent, self-confident New Yorker now looked more like a needy, dependent woman. This was a side of Cindy Bob had never seen before, and one that he did not like. But Cindy's mood rebounded after Bob promised to hurry back to her as soon as the game was over, forfeiting his plans to have lunch with his friends. For a while, it seemed, the old Cindy was back. However, the tennis game incident was just the beginning. Each time Bob wanted or needed to go somewhere alone, Cindy's complaints increased. At first she tried pouting, sulking, crying, the silent treatment, playing the martyr, and withholding sex as ways to pressure and punish Bob. Often she succeeded in manipulating him into changing his plans or, occasionally, inviting her to come along. She was very adept at making him feel guilty for leaving her alone. Over time, her sulking gave way to angry outbursts and screaming fits. Since Bob hated fighting and emotional chaos, he was readily manipulated. He canceled plans, turned down invitations for tennis and golf, and shortened his workouts at the gym. Her angry outbursts so unnerved Bob that he found himself quickly placating her whenever she started to scream at him. He was looking for a way to shut off the pain as quickly as possible. Cindy, for her part, saw how effective a raised voice could be as a potent weapon in her arsenal and did not hesitate to pull it out with alarming frequency. Eventually, if he only thought Cindy's anger was about to erupt, he capitulated almost immediately to whatever she asked. Sometimes, after he apologized and promised never to abandon her, the old Cindy would return, at least for a short time. But Bob was troubled by the pattern that had developed. Most of all, he was bothered by his own behavior. He did not respect men who were manipulated by women. The new Cindy was weighing him down with her clingy, unstable behavior. She was tearful or raging angry whenever he tried to make plans with his male friends. Worse, Cindy even started punishing Bob with the silent treatment or by withholding sex whenever he was on call for the weekend. Bob so dreaded Cindy's punishing emotional meltdowns that he developed sharp stomach pains whenever he made plans to play tennis or golf with his friends. Cindy passed no opportunity to remind Bob of all that she had given up to move to California. He was disappointed with her lack of effort to make new friends or find something worthwhile to do, but she was expert at pulling his guilt strings. After all, he reasoned, how could he abandon her after the sacrifices she had made for him? He began buying her expensive presents to ease his conscience, a behavior she actively encouraged. If Bob took a call from one of his friends at home, he could sense Cindy beginning to pout, and his stomach tensed up with pain in anticipation of the scene that was sure to ensue. Bob felt as though he lived with two Cindys, the confident, supportive woman he had fallen in love with only 6 months ago and the one that used every emotional ploy to get him to bend to her will. The bigger problem was that he did not like or respect the new Bob that the second Cindy seemed to bring out. 6 months after Cindy moved in with him, Bob came to see me. Bob's physician referred him to me after tactfully suggesting that Bob's stomach pains were likely the result of having two women in his life.